may have seen the new prayer guide come out this week. It was a little bit belated because of a rather busy week. A great week, obviously, doing the prayer walk last Saturday, here on Sunday, and then on Sunday, myself and Caroline went down to Taunton, sunny Taunton, to be on the Monday with our Harvest Alliance Southwest Leaders Hub. So there's about 25, 30 leaders gathered from the West Country mainly, and we had the privilege of just spending a day ministering there and connecting with people, ministries and churches that are in our Harvest Alliance network, and encouraging one another. And it was just great to meet some new faces and some old faces as well, but really a point of encouragement and support. And I think one of the reasons why God places us first of all in one family, but then also surrounds us with other people, is that there's this whole idea in the heart of God that it isn't good for us to be alone. And actually the place that God says that we will thrive in is a community that looks like a family. And that family, the family of God, is able not just to embrace our natural relatives, and sometimes in churches you do get families that are related. There's quite a few in this church. But also you get people from all different places and backgrounds and experiences and histories who God joins together in this incredible way to form his family. And he welcomes everyone in, doesn't he? He says that there is a place for anyone in my family. There is an open invitation to anyone that wants to come to me to be part of this family. And we see in this picture of the church and the family of God, this network of Christ, a network of encouragement and support. And one of the reasons that we are in a network called Harvest Alliance is because it's important for us as one expression of God's family to be part of something bigger, to have a wider sense of connection around us so that we can contribute to that and we can also receive from that. And obviously in any family, the contribution of each family member is important. Everyone has a role that they can play. Even the weakest members of the family, the youngest members of a family, can contribute to the life of the family. Think about it like the way that your household is run. There are various things that have to happen to make your home run smoothly. And so in our family, there are certain tasks that are given to different members of the family according to their ability maybe, but also according to what they feel that they would like to contribute, and they make the household run smoothly. And I'm not going to tell you who's assigned to different roles, but we have things like the bins that have to go out once a week. We have the recycling that has to be done on a very regular basis. We have the dishwasher that needs to be emptied. We have the table that needs to be laid and the things that need to be cleared up. And then basically everything else Caroline does. But in the church, it is no different. It is no different. We do not function without the activity of everyone bringing something to the table. And the beauty is that everyone has something to bring that will enrich the life of the family. And it is important, therefore, that you see your value and your place and how essential it is that you bring who you are to the table. And I'm not just talking about the clipboard, of course, although it's still out there. I'm not just talking about serving, although, do you know what? The way that you serve together as a family, most people do something. Most people do something. And it is a real blessing when we serve one another. And thank you for the way that you participate in that. But you, I want to tell you, have so much more that you can bring to the family, to encourage, to support, to inspire. And even, seeing Terry and everything that he has been walking through this last 6 months or so, and Sue, it has at times been so hard. And I don't think Sue's telling us the half of how hard it's been. It really has been a difficult time. But Terry's faith in all of that has been absolutely incredible. I don't think he's been out of the house, has he, in 6 months, not been able to get down the steps. He hasn't been out of the same room for 6 months. And do you know what? The resilience, the strength of his faith has shone through in those circumstances. Now, I'm not going to say that he hasn't had his moments, and I'm sure that he has. But to be sitting there and talking to Terry, and he is just really talking about how faithful God is and all the things that he's been seeing God doing around him in his small little world, that he only gets to see this, but he's seeing and looking at what God's doing. What an encouragement that is. So it's not just about what you are physically able to do, but it's about your faith. It's about your story. It's about your testimony. It's about maybe in the hard times saying, actually, I want to really encourage you because I went through a time when I really struggled, when the days were hard. And I really want to encourage you to talk about, if you're able to, and share, if you feel it's appropriate, what God has been doing in your life. Because God is at work in all of us. He is working through every circumstance and everything that we have to face to point us, I suppose, towards him and deepen our relationship and our personal knowledge of who he is and our personal experience of who he is. And if you're just at the beginning of that journey, I really want to encourage you to continue to open your heart to God and to say, Jesus, continue to show me who you really are. Because I believe that is what God is trying to do every day. He's trying to reveal more of himself to us, to you, his love, his faithfulness, his truth, his life, his strength, his comfort. Whatever it is that we need, he is trying to reveal himself to us so that we can know from our own experience God is like that. Not just from a song, that we sing, over the mountains, over the seas, God's river runs with love for me. That doesn't become meaningful until you have an experience in your life where you actually realize that God is like that for you. And that in a time when you needed to know his love, in a time when you needed to know that he was there for you, you opened up your heart to him and he came into that situation and started to reveal himself to you and be in that place with you. And now that song takes on new meaning because you can say, I can see that. I have experienced that. I identify with that. And coming to Christ doesn't mean to say that you will not have any troubles in your life. It doesn't mean that. It means that when you do have trouble, you know that Christ is there with you and will never leave you and will walk through those situations and circumstances with you, because often it's in those places that we deepen and strengthen our understanding and our knowledge of who he is. And this morning, I actually just want to I'm going to take 10 minutes just to say what I want to say, but I called this, when I was thinking about the prayer focus, I called this the message of the cross, but what I want to slightly change that to say the meaning of the cross. What is the meaning of the cross to you? What is the meaning of the cross to me? I felt that God wanted us to focus in on this, not just for a Sunday, not just when you read the prayer guide, but to ask ourselves this question: what does the cross mean to me? What does it mean to you? When I was out prayer walking last Saturday, I saw in Highfield a church called St. Paul's, and on St. Paul's Church, at the front of the church, is a big cross, just high up there as you go up towards the centre of Highfield, to under the railway bridge, or over the railway bridge, which was the Nicky line, to Belgate, which is on the right-hand side. The church is there, and as you go up, there's the cross over that community. It's really interesting to note that when we were doing the prayer walk, nobody requested a Highfield as a place that they wanted to walk in. All the other locations in Hemel, Grove Hill, Woodall Farm, Warner's End, Leverstock Green, Nash Mills, all of the other places, there wasn't one person that requested to walk in Highfield, which is how I ended up walking in Highfield. And I was glad for walking in Highfield because I saw the cross upright over that community that everybody passes, that drives through that central thoroughfare towards Belgate shops. The whole of that community drive past that church, and they drive past the cross. And obviously we know as believers that the cross has significance and it has meaning. And the reason why it has meaning and significance is because we understand what's behind the sign of the cross. I mean, if you look out in your ordinary everyday, I reckon that every day you can see the symbol of the cross in multiple different places. Often it's on a piece of jewellery, so it's actually worn by someone as a piece of jewellery. Some of you might be wearing the cross today. It might actually be earrings. It could be driving past a church where you will see the sign of the cross. But in all different places, even in our community now, which isn't as Christ-loving and worshipping as it was perhaps in the past, the symbol of the cross is evident for people to see. When I was thinking about this, the reason that I think I was being pointed towards this was at the gathering, which Richard was just touching upon again this morning. And at the gathering, which was this men's festival in a field near Swindon with a tent, and at the centre item, as you might call it, in that room of 1,500 chairs and guitars and PA and flashing lights, dartboards, tug-of-war ropes, and all sorts of other crazy things that were in there. At the very centre was this very, very normal cross, wooden cross, which stood upright at the stage. And in and amongst all of the other activities that was going on, ultimately all of them took second place in terms of the meaning of that gathering and the meaning of that weekend to this wooden cross, which was at the centre of the stage. No fancy layout. It was just on was it grass? They didn't even have any matting out, just sitting there. And I think I said that on the Saturday night, Carl called men forward who either wanted to dedicate their life to Christ for the first time, or rededicate their life to Christ, and he invited them to come and kneel on the grass around this wooden cross. And slowly that evening, men started to come out of their seats and walk towards the front, and they were applauded and cheered as they moved. And it was a slow march. A few came, and then a few more, and then a few more, and then a few more. And eventually there was just over 100 people knelt before a cross. And there were a few dry eyes in the house, but the ones that I looked around, most people's eyes were just filled with tears. It was a moving moment. There were two other things that have drawn my attention to this, because I've recently been reading about the Welsh Revival, and there's a guy called Evan Roberts who was probably about, 24, 25 in 1904, and he was a key character, central character in the events of 1904, 1905 when the Welsh Revival hit. Although there was no great big stage or name that people were following, it was said that this revival was a move of the Spirit, and it was actually called the Singing Revival. And you can imagine, the Welsh and the way that they sing. And it was said sometimes when they sang in Welsh that the presence of God and the Spirit of God was like fire in the room. And you can imagine God thinking, well, which nation are the singing nation? And this revival, but it said actually this guy was moved by God in the weeks and months leading up to the outbreak of the Spirit. And one of the things that he said was that there was a time when every time he saw the image of the cross, he was moved to tears. This is a 25-year-old guy who spent the first 10 years or so of his life, from about 12, I think, or 13, down the mines with all of those guys, all those working guys. He had, in that time, a fairly typical childhood. This guy was moved to tears just at the sight of the cross. More recently, we had the funeral of dear John Wilson, and the song that John loved was the Old Rugged Cross. And apparently this hymn was written, I researched it, a guy named George Bernard. He wrote many hymns, and he wrote it in 1913. And he said that hymn came about through a soul-trying experience. A soul-trying experience. It didn't come about through an amazing, successful experience, an ecstatic experience. It came about through a soul-trying experience, which prompted him to reflect on the cross of Christ and on St. Paul's reference to the fellowship of Christ's sufferings. And the words of the finished hymn, he said, were put into my heart in answer to my own need. In answer to my own need. He had a soul-trying experience which caused him to be aware of his need of Christ personally in his life, like he never needed Christ before. And the words were put into his heart to meet the need that he had. If you are in a soul-trying experience, this, I believe, is where Christ, the man of the cross, the Son of God, wants to meet and encounter you in the place where you have need in your own heart right now. And just as he spoke to George Bernard all those years ago, he has a way of speaking to you now which will meet your need and your circumstances. But the point is of all of this, the cross is nothing unless there is a Christ that hung on it. The cross is nothing without Christ. The cross only has meaning because of the meaning that he has imparted to it, which means that that symbol that we see every day is reflecting still what Jesus did all those years ago, which will speak throughout the ages. There were two people at the cross whose lives were also impacted by the events that took place at the cross. They were both men, again, and I say grown men because isn't there a saying that grown men don't cry? You heard that saying? I just want to tell you that is possibly true, but if you encounter Christ, it becomes an untruth. Because I believe that when you encounter Christ in the way that he longs to encounter us, even grown men, hardened men, drug dealers, guys that have been in prison, guys that have been written off, guys that you would think have got no hope and deserve no grace and mercy in their life. Even guys like that, we were hearing the testimony of the fact that they encountered Christ and their lives have been completely and utterly transformed, not because they deserved it, but according to the grace and the mercy that they found at the cross. So, we have, on the one hand, the thief. Two thieves either side of Christ on the cross. One who hurled, don't know whether I can say that, insults, I can say that, at Christ. And the other one who said, don't you know who this is? We deserve to be here. But Jesus does not deserve to be here on this cross. Jesus, will you remember me? And he says, yes, even today you will be with me in paradise. Then just a few moments, a little while later, after Christ gives up his life, there is a centurion there, a Roman commander, probably hardened by war, seen and done gruesome things in the name of the emperor. And this guy's testimony, when he saw and witnessed the crucifixion and the way that Christ had borne the cross, but also the way that Christ had died and said, into your hands, I give my spirit. He said, surely this was the Son of God. Jesus still brings grown men to tears. And Jesus still wants to move all of our hearts by the power and the meaning of the cross. The meaning of the cross. And my simple prayer is that as we take some time maybe this month to think about the cross and ask the question, what does the cross mean to me? my prayer is that the cross will take on a new meaning, a deeper meaning, that we will gain more understanding of what and who Christ truly is to us and for us. And so the cross will become more precious to us and will bring life to us. Because it's the Christ of the cross who still speaks to us today. And, you know, that message is for sharing. It is for sharing. So, maybe this week as you go away and around and about your normal things that you're doing, you could take a few moments and pause and say, and reflect and say, God, what does the cross mean to me? Think about it, write those things down. And then also say, God, what else do you want it to mean to me? What haven't I yet seen or understood from what the cross speaks to me that you want me to know, that I need to know for my life as it is right now? And I believe that God is going to do that for us. When God does that for you, can I encourage you to share that with other people? Maybe in your life group, maybe over coffee with a friend, because I just believe that God wants to encourage us and build us up. So I'm going to finish by praying, and then we can have some tea and coffee. Yeah, Father, I just want to thank you for sending Jesus, and we thank you for the amazing events of the cross. We thank you for your love revealed. We thank you for your sacrifice, for your suffering, for your forgiveness, for your death and resurrection, Lord. And we thank you for this eternal message of hope that you give us through the events of Calvary. And I just pray that as we go away and reflect on this, that you will reveal more of the meaning of the cross to us than we've ever known before, Lord, so that we have more to share, Lord, with those that we're around. Jesus, we thank you so much. Amen.